No, no, she's not really family. Just a bit off in the head. But she's harmless. I froze at the gate. The front door of the house was wide open, laughter pouring out into the afternoon sun. A few well-dressed guests stood in the foyer sipping wine, and her husband, Braden, smiled like a perfect host. Then he wiped his shoes. On my daughter. She didn't flinch. She was kneeling on a thin mat by the door, dressed in rags, her hair unwashed, her head bowed. She looked nothing like the brilliant, radiant woman I had walked down the aisle 3 years ago. My chest burned. I felt the world tilt. The last time we'd spoken, she told me everything was fine. That they were just adjusting. I hadn't even known where she lived until I pulled the address from a pile of unopened Christmas cards. Braden turned to one of the guests, laughing. Don't worry about her, she just gets like this. Our little house ghost. Something inside me snapped. I walked forward, past the shocked guests. When my daughter looked up, her lip was split. Her eyes widened in disbelief. And that's when Braden said too late, wait, who or why? But I was already standing in the center of the room, staring him down. Every guest went silent. And the smile drained from his face. Because he finally recognized me. And he had no idea I was coming. Dad? She whispered, but I could barely hear her. My daughter, Camille, looked like a stranger. Pale, thin, trembling. She was still kneeling on that mat like she didn't even know how to stand anymore. Braden straightened his blazer. Mr. Grant, he said coolly, you really should have called ahead. I didn't answer him. I crouched in front of Camille, touched her shoulder gently. She flinched. My heart split in two. A woman from the party whispered, wait, that's her father? I turned slowly to face the room, raising my voice just enough. Yes, I'm her father. And this, I gestured toward Camille, this is my daughter. Not a servant. Not a ghost. Not some broken thing you can step on. Braden chuckled nervously, walking toward me. Look, let's talk outside. You're blowing this out of proper. I shoved him back with one arm. Art. He hit a side table. A glass shattered. No one moved. Camille gasped, Dad, please don't, he'll make it worse. That's when I realized the deeper truth. This wasn't just humiliation. It was control. Abuse. A prison masked as a marriage. Braden looked up, eyes narrowed. You just made a big mistake. I helped Camille to her feet. No, I said. You did. When you let me through that door. I got Camille into my car before anyone stopped me. She didn't speak the entire drive. She sat curled up in the passenger seat, eyes wide open, her hands shaking in her lap. I had never seen her like that, not even as a child when she got sick. This was a different kind of hurt. Has he hit you? I asked gently. She didn't nod. Didn't shake her head. Just stared. When we reached my house, she walked inside like a ghost. She didn't ask for food. She didn't even ask why I showed up. She just collapsed onto the couch as if sleep was safer than life. That night, I went through her social media. All the photos, perfect polished smiles. Dinners with Braden. Brunch with his mother. Friends commenting, #goals. And then, in one picture, I noticed something. A faint bruise beneath her makeup. Right on the collarbone. Zoom in and you could see a cut on her wrist. My stomach turned. I called a friend of mine, retired NYPD. Run a quiet background on Braden, I said. I need everything. Then I checked my inbox. An unread message. From Camille. Sent months ago. Dad. I don't know what to do. He controls everything. I'm scared to leave. She had reached out. And I had never seen it. Now I was wide awake. And I was going to fix this, but not by yelling. No. That man wiped his shoes on my daughter. I'd make sure he never walked comfortably again. By morning I had a full file on Braden. The man had 2 restraining orders filed in college. His ex-girlfriend? Disappeared from social media entirely. His business? Registered under his mother's name. And 3 months ago he filed a police report, said Camille stole his Rolex. This was more than abuse. This was systematic erasure. He'd been burying her, piece by piece, under his ego, his image, and his lies. And now, with her living here, under my roof, I could finally see it clearly. Camille wouldn't eat unless I placed the plate in front of her. She whispered thank yous like apologies. She woke up screaming. I sat beside her one night, holding her hand. She asked, "Do you think I'm crazy?" I shook my head. "I think you're surviving something awful." She started crying. But not loud. Not messy. Just quiet tears, like she didn't think she was allowed to feel anything more. I decided to do what Braden never expected. Use silence as my weapon. I reached out to one of my old contacts, a partner at a private investigative firm. Then I contacted a women's shelter lawyer, told her to prepare a case file. Everything I learned, I documented. Braden thought he had broken her. But I was about to break his world, using the only thing he truly loved: his public image. The next Sunday, Braden showed up at my house. Uninvited. Hair slicked back, cashmere coat, grinning like he was some prince coming to fetch a runaway bride. He didn't even acknowledge me, walked right in. "Camille," he called. "Time to go home, babe. The guests are asking about you." She stepped out of the hallway, pale and frozen. "No," she said quietly. Braden chuckled, shook his head like she was the joke. "Come on. Don't embarrass yourself. Let's go." I stood up. "Come. Collected." "She's not going with you," I said. "And you'll want to leave now." He turned toward me, smirking. "Or what? You'll call the cops." I tilted my head. "No. But your investors might want to hear about the recordings I've compiled. And your mother's name being used to dodge liability in your fake company registration." That wiped the grin off his face. He stepped closer. "You think you're clever, old man?" Camille flinched. I stepped forward. "Touch her and I promise you, your career will be over before you feel the cuffs." Braden looked at her one last time. "This isn't over." Then he left. I turned to Camille. "Let me tell your story," I said. "Not for revenge. For truth." She nodded. "That night, we published everything. Recordings, screenshots, the police report she was too afraid to file. And by morning, the story had gone viral. The media did what I expected. They devoured him. Within 48 hours, Braden's polished empire cracked. The wellness startup he flaunted? Sponsors pulled out. Board members distanced themselves. And his investors? Silent, until they filed a lawsuit. But it was Camille's face, her trembling voice sitting in that interview chair, that haunted everyone. She didn't sound angry. She sounded empty. "He used to tell me I wasn't real," she said. "That no one would believe me. That I was just noise." Viewers wept. Support flooded in. Other women came forward, former coworkers, exes, neighbors. One called him a collector of silence. I watched it all unfold, sitting beside Camille on the couch. She still didn't smile much, but her eyes weren't as hollow anymore. That weekend, I took her to visit her childhood piano teacher. The moment her fingers touched the keys, she froze, then began to play. Something shifted. The next day, she bought paintbrushes. Then she painted the door red. Braden tried to retaliate, claimed defamation. His lawyer laughed him out of the room once the judge reviewed the abuse footage, including what he did at the house that day. Camille had secretly recorded everything. She had more strength than he ever gave her credit for. And the world finally believed her. But I wasn't done yet. Not until I dealt with the people who let this happen under their roof, his parents. They were next. They hosted a charity gala the following weekend. Braden's parents, Martin and Eloise, real estate royalty, pretending nothing had happened. As if the headlines didn't exist. As if Camille hadn't been their daughter-in-law. They smiled for cameras. Raised glasses. Gave speeches about family values and healing communities. I sat at the back of the ballroom. They didn't notice me, not until I stepped onto the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said calmly, tapping the mic, "I'm Samuel Grant. Some of you may know me as Camille Braden's father." A ripple of confusion. Martin rose from his seat, face tightening. I pulled a small remote from my jacket and clicked. The screen behind me lit up. Clips. Photos. Audio. Camille bruised. Crying. Silent. Then, Eloise brushing her off. "If you were a better wife, he wouldn't be angry." The room froze. I didn't yell. I just let the silence grow heavy until Martin yelled, "Turn that off." "No," I said. "Not until they see what happens behind closed doors." Camille didn't attend the gala. She didn't need to. By the time I walked off stage, 3 of their sponsors had already left. A local DA was waiting outside with a few questions about their foundation's finances. Truth has a sound when it lands. It's the sound of denial cracking. 3 weeks later, Camille stood on her own. No makeup. No fear. Just strength. She walked into the courtroom for Braden's trial with her head high. When asked if she had anything to say, she looked at him and said, "You taught me what silence feels like. Now I want you to feel it too." He looked away. For the first time, he didn't speak over her. The verdict? Guilty on multiple counts: domestic abuse, coercive control, financial manipulation. Sentenced to 7 years. But that wasn't the end. Camille started a nonprofit, the Red Door Project, For women who had been silenced, isolated, erased. The house he tried to break her in? She turned it into a shelter. And me? I retired. Sold my cabin. Moved into a small apartment near her. I visit once a week. She cooks now, tries out new recipes. We sit by the porch drinking coffee, watching birds. One morning she said, "I still hear his voice sometimes." I nodded. "But then I remember yours." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Thank you for not shouting. For letting the truth speak louder. And for the first time in years." She smiled. That quiet, peaceful smile, the one I hadn't seen since she was a child. That was my justice. That was my revenge. That was our beginning.